How we doing, everybody? It's your guy Wardy here, and we're back at it with our latest off-season breakdown here on the WardyNYM platform. As we know, the Mets season has come to a bitter end, a frustrating 3.5-month end, but now that the off-season is officially upon us, and while teams are still playing postseason baseball, we have a long road ahead, a long month ahead before everything really gets settled to figure out free agency, winter meetings, and everything in between. But in the meantime, we do have to break down the Mets' overall off-season plans moving forward, which now begs the question, what is next for this Mets team? As we're going to start off today's show by talking separately more on Major League Baseball as a whole, sharing our initial reactions to everything that's transpired in this year's postseason at this point, what we've liked versus what we maybe haven't liked as Mets fans and just baseball fans as a whole. From there, we're going to get into all the latest news regarding this Mets team, headlined by some coaching changes who have already begun that we have seen over the past couple hours as of today. From there, we're going to get into more coaching changes that are expected for this Mets team, what is more likely than others to happen, and we're going to evaluate this entire coaching staff. And then beyond that, we're going to take a deep dive looking at the active free agents for the Mets heading in the offseason, guys that look like that they're going to be on the trade market for the Mets to varying degrees, who's staying, who's leaving. We're going to break every single one of those players down and come to the conclusion as to what their future holds here, if it's going to be in Flushing, Queens or not. And to wrap up the show, we're going to share some thoughts and input as to some early targets the Mets could find themselves going after in the early goings of this offseason, from trade targets to free agency targets that are outside of this current roster. That and much more is what we're going to get into, everybody. So sit back, relax, and get yourself ready for the ride, which is our late night here, WardyNYM, not post-game show, sadly, but yes, off-season breakdown here to officially getting the plans here for 2026 and beyond. Thank you guys so much for hitting those buttons on your way in, and thank you also, everybody, for 35,000 subscribers. I really appreciate it. That was our latest short-term goal here on the platform, and as a sincere thank you, everybody, approximately a week from now, we're giving away a jersey to one lucky subscriber on the platform, and that is just as a thank you for our latest 1,000 our 1,000 subscriber milestone here on the platform. So all you guys got to do is make sure you're chiming into a live show that we do next week, which will probably be around Wednesday, barring changes, approximately 1 week from now. And that Wednesday live show a week from now, we're going to be giving away that jersey to one lucky subscriber. All you'll have to do is to be A, subscribe to the platform, and B, commenting in the live chat as the live stream is actively happening. That's all you'll have to do to enter a week from now. And we've already given away multiple Juan Soto jerseys, Brandon Nimmo jerseys, Brett Beatty jerseys, you name it. We've already done that plenty this year, and we will continue to as a further thank you for your endless support throughout the entire calendar season, and now getting what's going to be a lengthy, hopefully yet eventful offseason, to say the least, for this Mets team. Let's do a roll call to see who we have in here, everybody, and then we're going to go on from there. Thank you guys so much for taking the time. I appreciate it. I want to wait until that Yankees-Red Sox Game 2 matchup concluded. What a spicy one that was. I wish we had more of the outcome that we saw yesterday with Aroldis Chapman absolutely getting out of a bases loaded jam unscathed with no outs in the ninth inning. Did not get that today, but listen, it's going to come down to Game 3 that I have a lot to say about in a second, where the odds favor the Red Sox versus for Yankees and their fans, why you guys now have a sliver of hope that basically no other team usually has had heading into Game 3 of these matchups after losing Game 1 of the 3-game wildcard set. We got Juliet, great member in here. How are you? Thank you so much. We got Lups in here. Thank you so much for being in here. We got Sal in here. Yeah, we'll talk a little bit about guys like Belly, Murakami as options as we get towards the end of the show. Just make sure you're a part of it, because that's when we will wrap up the show and break down those early target ideas for this Mets team. Mad Team Parents, how are you? Great member. Homemade Pop. Brandon, how we doing? We got Bob in here. We got Michael Daughtry in here. We got Ines, how we doing? We got Alan. Kevin Flores. Sal, how are you, my friend? We got James, Mr. Chicken, Christian, going up the list. Dave Kaplitz, my guy, how are you? Great friend in here. We got PB9, great friend as well, great members in here. We got Kevin in here. We're going up the list. We got Camo in here. We got our guy G Money Stacks. We got Sage in here. We got all you guys. Thank you so much. Brian Torres, great member. You ever think of doing a collab video with Jolly? I've actually collabed with Jolly multiple times. He's been on the platform, and I usually have him on around the off season, because in season we're both very busy. He does a lot of miscellaneous work, as I have been as well. but he's been doing a lot of different things for John Boy. So yeah, I would not be at all opposed to having Jolly on for a segment. I'm sure we will probably have him on at least once, if not multiple times this offseason. Like I said, every single offseason is when I bring on more guests than during the season. Obviously, you will see every one of your fellow favorite Mets talking heads or analysts or beat writers in the community taking part in these weekly live shows that we do, everybody. It will not just be me. Thankfully, I have a wide net of connections and a wide net of friends in the Mets sphere that I think you guys are going to thoroughly enjoy, as well as people just in Major League Baseball sphere as a whole, when looking at reporters among many others, current players, former players, etc. So we're going to have a very eventful offseason, regardless of what the Mets do or don't do here. Going up the list, we got James Carroll, great member. Happy to have you in here. JPG, thank you so much for chiming in. We got Jesus, how are you? We got our guy Murdoch, great member in the chat as well. We got Pop in here. We got Philly. How we doing, my guy? We got Antoine in here. We got June 13. Is that Antoine Richardson, the best first base coach in all baseball? I hope it is. All jokes aside, happy to have you in here. Eugene, Daniel Casiano, anyone else that I miss, I apologize. I'll get to your comments as soon as I can, everybody. But we got a lot to talk about, Ray. You know it, I know. Frankie knows it in the chat, Mr. Almeida. So let's go ahead and talk about it all. So first and foremost, everybody, I'm just going to share a quick reaction and analysis, my own opinion here, to what's transpired over the past 24 hours in Major League Baseball when looking at the playoff format. And speaking of these playoffs, everybody, you guys should definitely check out my continued content on the Wardy MLB platform, which is my MLB-wide YouTube channel. We haven't posted there in a while because we were really in the brunt of it over the past 2 months, getting closer to the end of the Mets season when it came to really being stretched thin with making content each day. But we're going to be pumping out more MLB content there, including playoff-related content as well, looking at key performances, among other things. So make sure that you guys check out, subscribe to Wardy MLB. We already have over 2,000 subscribers, and we've only posted like 14 or 15 or so videos so far this year. So definitely check that out. We'll be pumping out more content there, especially throughout the offseason, including, yes, my takes on the offseason when looking at free agent and trade targets for opposing teams outside of just the New York Mets. My predictions as to bold predictions as I will see what other teams do across Major League Baseball and a whole lot more. So definitely tap into that if you guys have interest in MLB-wide coverage outside of just Mets from your guy Wardy here, and separate from my MLB content that I do in Bleacher Report every single Thursday now moving forward, guys. You guys will get posted on Thursday or Friday clips from yours truly breaking down MLB-wide topics, as I'll be breaking down more playoff topics from them tomorrow when I do my recording. And speaking of playoffs, everybody, what we have seen so far across Major League Baseball has been eventful postseason. Not so eventful for Cincinnati Reds and their fans. I can't say the Mets would have done much better, but at the same time, my oh my, was that a terrible showing that we saw yesterday, leading into now today, Game 2 matchup between the Dodgers and the Reds there. But as we take a quick look at a bit of what's going on in playoffs right now, everybody, going back to yesterday, we saw the Detroit Tigers take Game 1 after another stellar performance from, yes, you guessed it, Mr. Scooble. Tight one against the Guardians, but pitcher's duel goes in the Tigers' favor. We also saw the Yankees lose 3-1 yesterday in a dramatic fashion, headlined by Aroldis Chapman, as I mentioned earlier, escaping a bases-loaded no-out jam in the 9th inning and getting out of it unscathed, doing exactly what I was hoping he would do against his former team there as their former closer, and that's have the stare on the mound after securing the save, roaring to the crowd there at Yankee Stadium. Sadly, the Yankees bounce back today. I say that as a biased Mets fan, but it's going to make for a really exciting Game 3 matchup tomorrow that we see here. The Padres lost Game 1 3-1 against the Cubs. A lot of low-scoring games to begin the wild card. That was up until Game 1 in LA hit between Hunter Green and Shohei Ohtani and those Dodgers, and Shohei Ohtani with a big one, a blast not once but twice there for the Dodgers and their massive 10-5 victory yesterday. Today we saw the Guardians take Game 2 against the Tigers. Mind you, everybody, every single team that has won Game 1 in the expanded wildcard format of that 3-game series has ultimately won the entire series as a whole to this point, 12-0. So there was so much at stake heading into Game 2 for a lot of these teams potentially being bounced already. But Guardians, with backs against their wall, do what they have done oh so much of the past month and a half, and that's step up mightily in the clutch here against a Tigers team that they overtook the division of. The Guardians, 6-1 victory. Bo Naylor with the big 3-run blast for the cherry on top, and they've evened things up as we get set for Game 3. Manana or so, the Padres get a stellar outing from Dylan Cease, potentially future New York Met Dylan Cease, as he will be a huge free agent for many teams to inquire on this offseason that we'll talk about at least briefly before wrapping up the show. Padres, Manny Machado, Tatis, and everyone else in company lead the charge in a 3-0 victory against those Cubbies. Then we saw the New York Yankees just besting the Red Sox 4-3 there, that we literally just saw transpire at the time of us being live right now. The Red Sox had themselves what was a nice back and forth ball game, but I'm sorry, Mr. Cora looked like he did laps around Mr. Boone yesterday when looking at the managerial differences in decision-making. But today, Aaron Boone bests Mr. Cora, and the decision-making as Cora, one, kept some pitchers out way too long, had some terrible matchups where should have been lefty-lefty, stayed righty-lefty. There were a lot of decisions that I did not like by Cora at all, or the Red Sox, and that ultimately led to their failure, kept the Yankees right in this one, and the Yankees would prevail, and they would win this one 4-3 in the end, as Jazz Chisholm, the man who famously turned his back on the media yesterday, did not want to talk to them after being on, for whatever reason, and I don't think it was a good justified reason. Righty-lefty splits aside, I know that was what the reason was. It's not a good one in my opinion. It's a do-or-die game one for the Yankees at home. And Aaron Boone pulls a Mendoza, which is where Mendy gets us from, along with Stearns and others in part when looking at the numbers, and decides not to start his star middle infielder in Jazz Chisholm because, oh, I don't like the splits against Garrett Crochet. You know what? No one can hit a baseball against Garrett Crochet. So why does it matter now if it's a righty or a lefty? What should matter is you putting your best players out there the way that he most certainly didn't in game one between himself and Ben Rice. And oh yeah, Ben Rice hits a bomb to start off the ball game against the Yankees, against the Red Sox, and gave them a 2-0 early lead today against those Red Sox. Jazz Chisholm, the game-winning run in this ball game. The two guys that were not playing yesterday were the X factors a day later. It's almost like common sense would have told you that you should have kept them in from the start. Instead, they learned from their lesson a day ago. Now let's see if the Yankees can do something that no team in baseball has done at this point with the new expanded playoff format, and that's actually win the series after dropping game one. We know, obviously, we got the Reds and the Dodgers. We will see what happens there between those two clubs. I definitely want to know your guys' opinions as to what you expect to happen between those two. I'm going to double check right now just to make sure that I don't miss anything when looking at the scheduling for all these games before we move forward right now. The Reds and the Dodgers are currently tied 2-2 on ESPN. I got to turn that puppy on right now. And I just realized, hold on, can I turn on my TV with my phone? If I can't, we have ourselves a problem, Houston. So hold on one second. Let's see if we can do this. Let's throw on ESPN. There we go. Bang. Love to see it. So yeah, that's my thoughts, everybody. Just quick rundown in playoffs so far. I haven't been overly jaw-dropped by anything. If I'm being honest, I've been more locked in with the Yankees-Red Sox so far than anything else. I'm rooting hard for the Seattle Mariners once they get their playoff run going. Outside that, there aren't too many runs I genuinely care for. It's more hate-watching, if I'm being completely honest with you, than it is about caring for the teams that have success. The Mariners, as I mentioned, are that one exception for me because you have to admire a team that hasn't won their division since 2001 and finally has all the pieces, at least on paper, between J-Rod and Josh Naylor, Eugenio Suarez, the big bats acquired at the deadline, Randy Arozarena, a lot of different aspects of that lineup paired with one of the best rotations in baseball there, from the veteran Castillo to Mr. Wu to Mr. Logan Gilbert to George Kirby. The list goes on and on. Miller, I mean, you love what you see there in the pitching staff for that Seattle Mariners team, and they've just been wanting for some offense, and now they finally got that. So I hope that they have a deep playoff run for their sake. I think that's going to be great for baseball. Many deem them as America's team, and I don't blame them for feeling that way. There's a lot of aspects that I personally, again, love about those Mariners, but that's all I kind of have to say about that. Outside that, just hoping for good, entertaining playoff baseball more than anything else, like any other average fan. I think I'm not alone for feeling that way. So now, guys, let's go on from talking about playoffs here briefly to getting into the latest news and Mets land. And then from there, we're going to talk about who's staying, who's leaving, and some key guys that could be targeted by this New York Mets team as we head into the early goings of the offseason. And yes, we will have more expanded content on that on the platform in the coming days, so make sure that you guys are in on it all. Now, to go from there, let's see what broke earlier today. And as you guys can see here initially from Andy Martino of SNY, coaching news, Mets catching instructor who did a very good job this year with Alvarez to a degree and Torrens, even though I know Alvarez fluctuated defensively, and former bench boss back in 2022 for the Mets, that being Glenn Sherlock, has announced his retirement from coaching in Major League Baseball. Congratulations, Glenn, on what was a very good and impressive career for you, but Sherlock is just one of many dominoes expected to fall from this Mets coaching staff in the coming days to weeks, as Sherlock will likely enter the territory of guys such as Eric Chavez and or Jeremy Barnes, potentially Jeremy Hefner, even though I think that's far-fetched to say right now still, as guys who will not be part of this organization moving forward. And speaking of coaching staff, let's just take a quick sneak peek as to what the coaching staff currently entails for this Mets team, because I think that's really important. So let's go ahead. Let's take a deep dive. We're going to take a look at the roster here in a minute. But in the meantime, I want us to really take a thorough look at this coaching staff and what we could probably expect to see change in the coming days to weeks, if at all. Omari Reeves, thank you so much for the donation. I appreciate that. He says, do you believe Edwin will stay? I think it's really a coin flip as to if Edwin Diaz is going to stay in the organization or not. And that is why I discussed Edwin in our video that dropped yesterday of 5 Mets who will not return for next season. And when I say that, it's not that I want it to happen, but that there's a fear of it happening. And the main reason why there's a fear of Edwin Diaz being parted with, and we'll talk more about this, so I'm going to summarize this for now before we get into the roster and breaking down who's staying and who's leaving, is when you have a guy who's had his best career years in both walk years in 2022 and 2025, and you have a player, as we know, who already got a record-breaking contract from the organization of 5 years over $100 million, you know, depending on how far he wants to go this offseason, if he's commanding dollars and length, one, this is not the Billy Upper regime. This is David Stearns now. And two, this is a completely different environment and feel coming off of a losing season for the Mets. You have to wonder, to what degree do they value Edwin Diaz and him returning when looking at length, if that is something that he really demands in his deal? If he wants another contract of 5 years, I'll be hard-pressed to believe that David Stearns and Steve Cohen will go the lengths to make that happen. Do they want him back? Yes, but do I think they're going to bend over backwards to make sure Edwin Diaz returns? That I simply do not have an answer to. I'm not to say that they won't entirely, but there's a lot of uncertainty with this team right now because you can't believe the things that maybe you believed in the past when evaluating how Stearns would operate, because I think Stearns has learned now the hard way that he's going to have to deviate a little bit from how he typically operates when running an organization, with really evaluating players at a deeper level than, you know, maybe years past, and evaluating different aspects to a roster separately from what he has in the past. No formula is a perfect formula, and the Mets proved in real time this past year how much can go wrong between offseason acquisitions and a lack of in-game feel throughout the entire course of the season. So, would I like Edwin back? Yes. Do I hope he comes back? Yes. Is it a lock that he comes back? No, is most certainly not. So, talking about the coaching staff, everybody, we know Carlos Mendoza isn't going anywhere. Mets Pobo, David Stearns stated himself that he is not going anywhere. They said in media over the past day or so. John Gibbons, Mets bench coach, former manager of the Toronto Blue Jays. Gibby, obviously, has been a nice veteran presence for someone in Carlos Mendoza. But beyond that, exactly how much value has he brought to the organization at this point is something that I don't necessarily have an answer to. And because of that reason, he is a question mark as to if he will return. Danny Barnes, strategy coach for this Mets team, as we know. How much value has someone like Danny Barnes brought to this organization, as the Mets have obviously struggled mightily in strategy? Jeremy Barnes, the hitting coach, who's been co-hitting coach with Eric Chavez. And mind you, Barnes has been the co-hitting coach and has been the guy basically since we saw him be put into place from firing Chili Davis in the 2021 season. He is so grandfathered in that, in my opinion, it's kind of hard to justify why this duo especially is still here living and breathing in a Mets uniform. It makes little to no sense. And yes, I understand the Mets had a top 5 offense in baseball this year, one's above replacement. But I'm sorry, that has a lot more to do with the guys who were already talented and were already going to blossom regardless of the coaching staff around them than it was the other aspects. Because when you look at 5 through 9 of this Mets lineup this year, they struggled mightily to stay consistent. Whereas the Fab Four all did their thing for the most part, because again, these guys are going to perform no matter where they are for the most part, and no matter what coaching staff they have backed. If you separate the greater players and the Sotos and then Lindors, Alonsos, Nemos from the McNeils, Vientoses, Beatties, Alvarez's, Mauricio's, tailors, etc., what you find is those are the batters that great teams maximize and get the best out of. The Mets struggled mightily to get consistency from that group 5 through 9 throughout the course of the season. So I think a normal reaction in the case of this hitting coaching staff is you would like to evaluate the guys that are clearly in more need of growing as a batter. And out of the players that need more growth or need more productivity on the consistency front, the Mets did a piss poor job in that regard, with the exception of Brett Baty, because he did have himself a very good season in the second half especially. Mark Vientos, injury-filled in that season, they flopped on completely with finding a consistent groove. It was all up to Mark more than anyone else. You could tell. Ronnie Mauricio, let him raw on the bench. That was the main reason for it. Acuna, kind of the same thing. When you look at other aspects of this team, outfield could have maximized it better than what you did, regardless of Jose Siri's injury, and you didn't. There was a complete lack of field with in-season adjustments there. So I heard Nimmo's getting traded. Yeah, I didn't hear that. Anyone that's saying that is just suggesting that because a lot of people don't like Nimmo and his inconsistent play. The problem is Nimmo has a contract that the Mets are going to really have to get someone to be a great suitor for to eat a good chunk, or even if the Mets eat a good chunk. And the Mets are not in a position to do that because Brandon Nimmo is not that bad of a player to eat the majority of his salary for what is still going to be another 5-6 years left on his contract. It just is not going to happen at this point. Talking about Brandon Nimmo going anywhere right now is, in my opinion, you're still at minimum a year, if not multiple years, away from that becoming a reality, should it happen, and should he not play out his years in the New York Mets uniform. So when we look at the hitting coaches and we look at this coaching staff to this point, there's a reality that we're looking at 4 people all not here next season. And Eric Chavez, Jeremy Barnes, Danny Barnes, and John Gibbons. And my reasoning for all 4 of them is, how much of a needle mover have they been? It felt like there was a continued lack of voice and understanding in the clubhouse this year. It felt like there was a complete lack of in-game adjustment and feel by this team in comparison to the teams that they're supposed to be right on par with, and the Dodgers and the Phillies and the Padres and the Cubs, etc. If teams are constantly doing laps around you, both bad and good teams throughout the course of the season, and you are constantly not making these proper in-season adjustments, then I'm sorry, I'm led to believe that there's a coaching staff problem. So while I do not anticipate that they go completely clean house for this coaching staff, I'm inclined to believe that they're going to be getting rid of a good amount of pieces. So because of that reason, if the Mets part ways with all these 4, I'm not going to lose any sleep over it. I think most of you would want all 5 of these parted with, including Carlos Mendoza. But that obviously is not going to happen yet. Whether you guys like it or not, Mendy is not going anywhere. So now here's the thing. Should you part ways with these guys as your hitting coaches, that being in Chavez and Barnes, who are you replacing them with? Well, one man that comes to mind right away, but I don't think he's going to want to do it right now, is Daniel Murphy. We all agree Daniel Murphy has all the makings of being what very well could be a fantastic hitting coach. But he knows the grind it'll take. He knows how it could potentially impact his legacy to a degree as a New York Met, even though maybe not because, he killed us as a Washington National. So can he really do much worse as a hitting coach? I'm not necessarily inclined to believe that. There are Mets alumni we can think of as guys who could fit the mold as hitting coaches, but it doesn't just stop there. There are many people across the game today who could fit the void of not just hitting coaches, but the other aspects of the team. And I have to be completely honest with you. There's one coach out there that I think would be brilliant of a hire for this Mets team, more for the feel to have a cultured voice there, and one who's been around the game for decades upon decades on end, that could bode so well even just as a third base coach, because by God, we don't need Mike Sarbaugh, who did nothing to impress this season. There's no reason to run it back with Mike Sarbaugh. Who should he bring in? A man, if he's willing to return, but I have a feeling he's going to want to go back to where he had a lot of great success with against this New York Mets team. And that is, yes, you guessed it, everybody. Yes, you guessed it. Ron Washington. It should be him. Wash is the guy that the Mets should bring in. He feels like a perfect fit, if I'm being completely honest. Whether as a bench coach or maybe more as, I think he would be better as a third base coach, because I don't know exactly how much benefit there would be if he was the one to replace. I mean, I don't know. If you want to replace one veteran former manager in Gibby with Ron Washington, I don't know how much of a upgrade versus lateral move that is. Versus if you have him as your third base coach, a guy who you know is going to be aggressive there, and a guy who you know is going to bring a great atmosphere and hopefully really help develop the defensive game of one Brett Beatty continued, the way that he most certainly impacted Ozzie Albies, Austin Riley, and their continued progression in the Atlanta Braves organization. You know, Ron Washington feels like the guy that if he's not going to go to Atlanta, now that he's been parted with by the Angels because they look like they're going to hire Albert Pujols because, you know, Artie Moreno continues this whole notion where I'm not the problem, but everyone else is. Literally the biggest dumbass of an owner in baseball outside that schmuck you have in Pittsburgh and that dumbass also, pardon my French kiddos, that you have in Southside Chicago. You know, they're three peas in a pod when it comes to how idiotic they are and how stupid and just truly how out of touch they are with the game. And I've said this for a while. The Angels will not be a competent baseball team until Artie Moreno takes his paws and takes his dirty mitts out of baseball operations. And I wish Pujols the best. Should he become manager there? But I think he will manage the Angels in great similarity to how he performed there, which was nice individual success, but not a whole lot of playoff success because it comes down to roster production. Bruce Bochy brings a voice, brings a veteran leadership, no doubt. But would Bochy come to the Mets? Does he have interest in something like that? It's hard to believe that a coach like himself who's been out west for as long as he's been would be willing to take a lesser role with the New York Mets coming off the season that the Mets had. I don't think Bochy fits the role the Mets would be looking for. I think Washington makes more sense in a role like third base coach. But I say that knowing that there's a great reality that Ron doesn't want to be in that kind of position again with a team. Maybe there's a reality that he has no interest in coming to a team like the Mets because he knows they are the Mets. It's a kind of a tough sell right now. Got to be honest with you. They might be great in hospitality, but when it comes to consistency and winning, you know, Ron isn't getting any younger. I'm sure he would like to be part of a winning organization. That alone should probably have him not considering the Mets at this point in time. But from Jose Rosado, a bullpen coach who, you know, how much value has Jose Rosado brought as bullpen coach? Not a personal slight on Jose Rosado. Bullpen coaches usually don't do anything terribly wrong on paper. But at the same time, Mets bullpen kind of cheeks. Where was he at fault this season? Is he a guy you need to run it back with? Probably not. Rafael Fernandez, coaching assistant. What has he brought? No, Eric Laniel, bullpen catcher. He's been around for a while. We're going to keep them the same. Dave, same way. Kevin Mahoney, batting practice pitcher. Those are different. Those guys mean not as large in roles in comparison to the others. But when I'm looking at this entire coaching staff, Desi Driscoll, assistant pitching coach, I love you, Desi. I was really excited about the hire, but this was an underwhelming season in regards to maybe what you brought to the table. And, you know, was that more pitching injuries than anything else? Possibly. You know, I'm willing to give you a leash there. It was your first year here. Okay. But between John Gibbons to Danny Barnes to Jeremy Barnes to Eric Chavez to Mike Sarba to Jose Rosado to Glenn Sherlock, who's no longer here, and Rafael Fernandez, how much value are the Mets really getting in any of these coaches? I think we all come to the same degree. We don't really know. But what we do know is that the Mets had a terrible season, so you can't run it back with the same group. The way you can't run it back with this roster is the way you cannot even run it back with this coaching staff by any stretch of the imagination. So I don't know about you guys, but for me personally, I not only anticipate, but I hope that a good chunk of this coaching staff is parted with. Because there's not enough justified reasons to run it back with them. And allow David Stearns to have more of his mitts on this. This is his team, right? He didn't hire Eric Chavez. He didn't hire Jeremy Barnes. He didn't hire Jeremy Hefner. Not that Hefner needs to go anywhere, but to make an example, he did not hire multiple aspects of this coaching staff still. If he's going to run the ship for the years moving forward, he needs to have his hands on everything. So while, yes, he said at his presser that, you know, I am the dictator in every aspect of this team, that is true. He signs off on the guy staying here after they were grandfathered in from Epler and his, you know, recommendation. But beyond that, they have provided little to no value that we've seen on the surface. So if you're David Stearns, if you're coming off a really bad season where now you finally have pressure on you for the first time as a president, at minimum, the first thing that you should be doing is parting ways with any pieces who moved this team lateral at best, who are not your own hires. Bring in your own people. That is literally the point. Bochy is not going back to San Fran. It was unless it's going to be for a role outside of manager. Because what we saw was GM, pardon me today, that being in, why am I blanking so bad right now? Buster Posey for the Giants state that Boch will not come back in the managerial position. That's not the direction they're going in. But in some form of different position, whether it's as an advisor, an assistant, they're all ears to it. Let's see. And you're not completely wrong, JTB, talking about Mendoza and the aspects of him being a puppet. He's not a true puppet in the sense that, you know, he's not going to listen to everything David says where he can't make his own in-game decisions. But there is no denying that the Mets approach lineups in similarity to how the Yankees do. They provide their own lineup that I'm sure Mendoza either collaborates with the coaching staff on or he himself builds, and then you get relayed information and or a separate lineup from the analytics department of the organization, and you come to a conclusion based on splits from righties to lefties, as well as end-game feel what Mendoza decides to do there. And what we saw time and time again throughout the season was that lack of end-game feel. Sometimes it worked. Sometimes the lineups that, you know, emphasize the splits with certain players and others didn't make sense, but it worked still. And there were many other scenarios where end-game decisions especially did not work. But to your point, yes, knowing that Carlos Mendoza is a David Stearns hire through and through means he's going to want to have a leash more than the average guy that was grandfathered in. And two, he had the Mets 2 games shy of the World Series a year ago. You're not going to cut bait with a manager this soon after his first, not even a losing season, but losing by all accounts from what the initial expectation was. Probably the biggest disappointment of a season I've ever witnessed as a Mets fan. And that's saying a lot. Or up there. It probably is. It really probably is, the more I think about it. Rocket Man with a $5 donation. Thank you. I feel like people are over-exaggerating Pete's defense overall. It's been pretty solid besides his throws. I mean, listen, Alonso did cost the Mets to a degree this year. He cost the Mets on multiple end-of-the-game plays because of his incompetence with throwing the baseball this season. I don't think it's Volpe level bad, but I don't think Alonso will ever be a gold glove defender. And there's not that gold glove means anything nowadays, because that's a flawed thing in itself, because the voting's just an absolute joke too. They don't really care about metrics that they should. But I don't think Alonso is ever going to be a value of a defender that should warrant going in direct hand with how much money you spent on him. There's nothing about Pete Alonso as a defender at first base on the consistency front that warrants that being a needle mover as to, oh, he needs to be our everyday first baseman. Alonso's a DH through and through, for being transparent. Alonso is what Mark Vientos should be if he fully blossoms, but at DH. Alonso, if he committed to DH fully, would be an absolute menace. And I think it would be tremendous. And I think it would lengthen the Mets lineup absurdly. I think if you put Alonso at DH, you continue his career longer than if he stays at first base. I think if Alonso's at DH, you get creative and provide even more oomph into your lineup by adding someone externally at first base that either gives you a different look as a left-handed bat, cough, cough, Josh Naylor, or is someone that you can interchange at first base and DH between Alonso and, say, a Kyle Schwarber if you really want absolutely bananas. And that's, we're talking absolutely bananas. And that's okay if you disagree, Kevin. My only ask is why? Why do you disagree? I'm only relaying what the actual facts are here. If you look at Alonso's metrics, they will tell you he's not a great defender at all. And we also have seen it with the eye test as well. So it's not like I'm just talking out of my ass right now. I think, like, we've all seen the woes with Alonso. We all have come, at least I have come to the conclusion that in order for Alonso to probably be best fit for this team, it would be best at DH unless the Mets sign someone else at DH to really be the star there. His play at first was decent this year, but decent, that entirely proves my point. Decent's fine, but decent is decent. You can upgrade there still, while still maximizing his value, which is not nearly on defense as it is on offense. Both things can be true at the same time. But going on from the coaching staff, everybody, let me know who are some people externally that you would like to see added into this coaching staff, or maybe people internally. Would you like to see Carlos Beltran utilize? Would he consider the bench boss role for this Mets team to pair with Carlos Mendoza? Or would that be two minds of similarity? Because I think Beltran as this bench coach would be unbelievable for this Mets team. I think it would do wonders for this team. I don't think it's as much about him being similar to Mendoza as it is, unlike Mendoza, you finally have that championship caliber player that can be that voice of reason in the clubhouse and can help really let them hear it and tell them exactly what they need to be heard when going through those rough moments and patches throughout the year. Just like how JD Martinez helped uplift this Mets team in a lot of ways. But my thing is, and the reason why I will not get my hopes up on Beltran happening, is he's had a nice role with the Mets in their front office, and he's actually upgraded and has had more of an impact on the Mets since David Stearns has become Pobo. When he was initially, hired as the assistant of the GM under Epler, and that was transitioned from Epler to Beltran, there was a transition of Beltran actually being more involved in the day-to-day process of the organization. So would he be moving up or moving down if he, say, got moved into the bench coach role if you parted ways with Gibby? And this is not a personal slight on Gibby, just we know changes that need to be had here. I don't think he's doing anything besides moving things lateral for the most part, right? So that's something you really need to think about. If that is not a moving down move, but instead moving up in his eyes, as someone who maybe really does want to become a manager sooner rather than later in his career, I think that could really work. I think there's a lot of reasons to believe that could work. I could see him impacting the Mets in a way that Alex Cora impacted the Astros when he was their bench coach. There's a lot of potential going back to when he was the bench coach of AJ Hinch. There's a lot of similarity there. But Beltran was a greater player, obviously, and one who could really impact this team. So there are a lot of people that can fit the mold, but when looking at internal options, Carlos Beltran and talking head turn coach Daniel Murphy could be something that could work as well. Now, to go on from the coaches, it's about time we talk about this roster, because who's staying, who's leaving. And as we break down this Metropolitan roster, everybody, you guys can do it with me. And thank you so much, Mad Team Parents, for the fight. Holla. Whoever the heading coach is for Q's would be my choice. I'm really impressed with the way he helped Alvarez with his heading. That would be JP Arencibia was actually the man who helped him there, as he's the bench boss, I believe, for AAA Syracuse. He was the man who really, I think, uplifted Alvarez as a former MLB catcher, mind you, as well. So I wouldn't be opposed to JP being considered to be moved up internally in the organization. I think that would actually be a guy more relatable than clubhouse for the Mets as the bench coach, because he's not as far removed from his playing days as Gibby has kind of been removed from last time he was, a manager, and how the game has changed over the years to a degree. I think there would be positive aspects to that. That's the route the Mets considered. So, not a bad suggestion. Thank you so much for the donation. I appreciate that. But yeah, JP Arencibia is the guy who I know did help for certain, just in uplifting Alvarez, one, and just helping him go back to his original game, and that's to be a home run hitter. This Mets coaching staff, though, everybody, not coaching staff, I apologize. This Mets 40-man, let's break it down. Let's get into it. Let's break down these active free agents for the New York Mets. As you guys can see, the free agent list is as follows: Pete Alonso, Edwin Diaz, Starling Marte, Frankie Montas, even though we know he's coming back, AJ Minter, Cedric Mullins, Ryan Helsley, Jesse Winker, Gregory Soto, Tyler Rogers, Ryan Stanek, Griffin Canning, Jose Siri, Brooks Raley, Drew Smith, and Richard, a.k.a. Dicky, Lovelady. Let's go bottom up with this one. So let's start here with Dicky Lovelady. Dicky Lovelady is not even in the organization anymore, so there's nothing to talk about there. He was one of multiple players that exercised their ability to be outrighted from their contract and elect free agency. He's one of them. So Dicky Lovelady is officially a free agent. Jose Siri, who had multiple years of club control under his contract, was outrighted to AAA Syracuse and then was officially released from the organization. He too is now a free agent. Two players who are not returning to the Mets at minimum to begin next season, barring changes. Drew Smith has a club option of $2 million and has been rehabbing injury. and the Mets feel that they can maximize the value of Giroux at just $2 million returning from injury, then they will exercise that club option. Otherwise, he is not a player that will be returning. But considering he rehabbed in the org all year long, I have a sneaky suspicion he ain't going anywhere. Brooks Raley, coming off of a tremendous season for the Mets, returned there in the month of June, July area, coming back from his reconstructive Tommy John surgery, and Raley was as advertised. He was fantastic. Right around a 2.3 or so ERA on the season, and their most reliable pitching option in this bullpen, not named Edwin Diaz, which is why Carlos Mendoza was a dunce then, and he's a dunce now for pulling Raley with one on and one away after he was just trying to get a couple outs there. Instead, they went to Ryan Stanek. That blew up the game. That was the rest. Mets didn't hit at all, and they go on to lose that series finale 4-0 against those Miami Marlins. But Raley has a club option, thank God, of $4.8 million, and that is a bargain. What Brooks Raley would get in the free agent market would be north of easily $10 million with a season that he was having, or at least wrapping up for the most part. Let's see, why can you donate or why can't you donate, Nomo? I'm not entirely sure. If you meant to say can't, I'm not sure. There is an option to donate should you wish. If you just hit the money sign and then you can see your donation options. I'm not asking you to donate by any means. I'm just saying if that's what you're trying to do, that's how you do it. I'm sorry if you're having any issues there. And if you're asking why can you and you just don't want to, then I don't know what to say there either. To continue, though, Brooks Raley, he will be returning this Mets team. David Stearns is 1,000% going to be exercising the option on his contract to make sure that he returns. Griffin Canning, guys, Griffin Canning was kind of really good. Griffin Canning had a couple not-so-great starts and then a good-looking start, and then he blew up unfortunately, his Achilles, and then that was it for him on the season. But let me remind you how good Griffin Canning looked throughout his stint with the Mets. And this was a guy who was released by the Braves outright before the season. That's why the Mets picked him up. In 76.1 innings, Griffin Canning put up a 8.25 K per nine to a 4 walks per nine, a sub-1 home run per nine for the first time in his career. That was the most notable thing because he gave up more home runs than any eligible starting pitcher in all of the American League in 2024. With the Mets, he had a 3.77 ERA, a 4.6 expected ERA, and a 4 FIP. So not great expected numbers, but Canning was looking like a really nice rubber arm option for the Mets that they could utilize as a starter, a multi-inning guy. Like the Cannings were the type of guys the Mets desperately needed down the stretch, didn't have because they were out with injury, and that really hurt them. But Canning is going to make a full recovery, and he's someone who I really think is going to return to the team. I think Canning is honestly kind of an easy buy-in for David Stearns because we saw him have success here, and we saw his appreciation for finally having success the way that he did in this organization. And Canning's most innings pitched in a season was 170 from a year prior with the Angels. So he's a innings eater for sure that has a lot in the tank still. I think the Mets are going to bring Canning back on at least a one-year deal. I think that makes plenty sense for sure. And Dwayne, thank you so much for the kind words. I appreciate that. Everybody, give me 1 second. I got to go run to my door quick to bring in my margarita vodka pizza like the late night DJ that I am so I can dog that after I talk to each and every one of you. Be right back. Not bad. Not bad. Not bad. Just on the eye test? On the eye test alone, that's like a 7.6. That's not bad. I'm a big pizza guy. I'm very big pizza guy. All right, hold on. I agree, it needs some char. Unfortunately, everything can't be coal-fired the way I want it to be. Hold on. Okay. Let's lock in. Amazing entertainment. Watching Wardy eat pizza. Exactly. We're going crazy here. Late night Wardy. Off-season Wardy. You never know what you're going to get here. Let's hop back in. Apologies for the jump scare on my Instagram. I have myself this one. But you guys know one thing on the platform. If you're new, it's okay if you don't know. But for our recurring viewers, that is something that we do by accident all the time. And if I show that intro by accident, that means it's going to be a good stream. That means we're locking in. That means we're going to have a lot of fun. And to continue on with the Mets free agents on staying and going, I need you guys to spam in the chat simply stay or leave regarding these players as we get to guys now where there is question marks really as to if they're going to return. And Griffin Canning, spam in the live chat, everybody, into our replay viewers. Comment down below. Let me know, stay or go. I'm going with stay. I say bring Griffin Canning back on a 1-year contract. It honestly makes too much sense not to make it happen. So that's what I have to say about that. Ryan Stanek. Ryan Stanek did not have a good season for the New York Mets. And while there were aspects to Ryan Stanek that I enjoyed more towards the end of 2024, the commonality with Ryan Stanek is that for 2 straight seasons, it's kind of dog shit. Like, I don't mean to be rude. I'm being honest. For the past 2 years since he left Houston, he really has not looked nearly as good on the consistency front. And this is a risk that teams take when they invest in relievers in the offseason, which is why no team, including the Mets, should bend over backwards over relievers this offseason, with the exception of Diaz to a degree. How many relievers have we seen every single year have a big year, then get absolutely rocked the next season? Jekyll and Hyde, because they're always roller coasters. Hector Neris, who was a part of the free agent class with Ryan Stanek, with Darren Phil Maton, all former Houston Astros relievers. What do they have in common? All the teams that they signed with heading into that next season, they were parted with by that same team. Phil Maton was salary dumped to the New York Mets last year. We saw Ryan Stanek dumped to the Mets from Seattle. And we saw Hector Neris dumped and actually DFA'd and parted with by the Cubs outright last year. And that goes to show you the importance of an actual pitching lab when you're going to be able to maximize and get the best out of these guys, so that way you don't have to spend stupid money in the offseason just to make yourself a decent looking bullpen. Pat, WardyNYM, yeah, the day that happens is the day I'm no longer here. Thank you for the donation. Nomo, thank you for the dono. I'll get to that in a second, my guy. So regarding Ryan Stanek, I'm going with no, don't stay. If you guys are saying stay in regards to Stanek, you're crazy. I'm assuming that you're saying it more in regard to the previous that we just discussed in Canning. But yeah, no, for Stanek, I'm going heavy leave here. Nothing personal, Ryan, but his K per 9 dropped to a 9.3 this year to a 5 walks per 9. The walk rate never looked good as a New York Met. A 5.3 ERA and a 4.4 expected ERA, 56 innings and 65 outings. Yeah, no, I'm okay. I'm okay. Ryan Stanek, thank you for your service. Thank you for some flame-throwing FU fastballs for strikeouts, but I don't thank you for the constant meatballs that you served up throughout a good stretch of the year as well. So, Ryan, which you knew the best, my friend, but the fact that the Mets try to hunt on you all year long because of your playoff value, because for those that don't know, Ryan Stanek is a very good playoff performer, has been his entire career, but the Mets didn't even get to utilize him in playoffs, so who gives a damn, right? For those reasons, Ryan Stanek, you, my friend, gotta go. Tyler Rogers had himself a really solid stint with the Mets. Yes, he wasn't great with inherited runners. That is true. But he still put up right around a 2 ERA with the Mets during his time with the Mets here. And Rogers has been consistently one of the better, sneakier relievers that we've seen in all of the National League during his long tenure with the San Francisco Giants. I think that this is going to come down to a couple factors. One, David Stearns' appetite to run it back with him. And two, his appetite to want to return to a market like New York. You know, after having the free fall the way that the Mets did, I'm not sure how much of an appetite Tyler Rogers has in returning to this Mets team. And he has the right to sign anywhere and very well could get an absolute bag because he's a rubber arm and an anomaly of a pitcher as a submariner, which is going to make him more valuable to a degree in the free agent market. Even though he doesn't get swing and miss, even though he doesn't have velocity, it doesn't matter because there are no other pitchers actively in Major League Baseball like him for the most part. So that alone separates himself from the rest. So do I want Tyler Rogers back? Yes, I do. And I think if you don't want Tyler Rogers back, it's more so because you just got bothered by a bad outing or two, and that was about that. Rogers is a bulldog. He would be one of our higher leverage options next season. And throughout a whole year, I think Rogers could do a lot of good for this Mets team, like we have seen him do continuously in the past. The downside is he doesn't strike anyone out. Exactly. But you don't need him to, because that's not what his role is. That's like asking a fully well-rounded ground ball starting pitcher, oh, how are you only averaging a 6.8 K per nine? That's because, buddy, I'm a ground ball starting pitcher. I'm not looking for swing and miss. I'm looking for soft contact to induce for double play, ground ball outs, or whatever the case may be. Now, Tyler Rogers, I have him hopefully staying. Next, we have Gregory Soto. Gregory Soto really didn't look that great for the New York Mets. Soto pitched to around a 4 ERA, if not higher, for the Mets. His K per nine wasn't terrible, but he just fluctuated to handle not only higher leverage against good teams, he also struggled that we saw in various situations for the Mets. And I don't know why Fangraphs still has Gregory Soto with the wrong photo. It's actually of, if I'm not mistaken, it's of Dominguez, the former Philly turned Orioles reliever. Nonetheless, he had a 10.4 K per nine this season, a 3.5 walks per nine. The best walks per nine we've seen from Gregory outside of his 2023 season with the Phillies, a 4.18 ERA and a 3.8 expected ERA. But Gregory Soto feels like the kind of guy that if the Mets brought him back, I wouldn't hate it. I wouldn't be opposed to Gregory Soto in lower leverage as long as he's not our high leverage lefty option. But inevitably he would be our higher leverage option. So because of that reason, that's what we're going with. Let's see. No Name, thank you so much for the donation. I appreciate that. Dodgers fan here. D-Mac and Wardy subscribers. Sorry your season ended the way it did. Love your passion. Obvious Soto isn't worth Ohtani money. I disagree. Listen, do I think Soto's worth the money? I don't think any player is really worth that kind of money. And Kevin, you're 20 minutes from New Haven. You are a spoiled schmuck is what you are. Oh man, that makes me mad. I'm very envious. Especially for the Mets fans that live in New Haven, I'm very envious. I've yet to try Pepe's or Modern or Sally's. They're on my list. I've tried some other great spots from New York and from New Jersey, but I've not tried there yet. And I look forward to. I tried the spot, DeLucia's in Raritan, that people rave about. It was very good, but I think we could still do better. Mind you, it was really good still. From like a 100-year-old oven for the most part, or felt that way at least. Big tangent here. But Soto was literally the best player for the Mets this year. He was the best. He put up the best offensive season in Mets team franchise history. To say that he isn't worth it, I think is silly. I can understand the fans that say, oh, Soto factors in the Mets not doing more around him, but that isn't the case either, because they will do things around him. They most certainly will do now after he did what he did, especially in the second half. The Mets, everyone else did nothing. They know to build around Juan. Not to just have him stand on an island by himself. But thank you so much for the donation. I appreciate that. I know your Dodgers up 3-2, but 1 out and 2 on against Nick Martinez right now in Game 2. And what's going to be an easy series sweep there of a 2-game set for the LA Dodgers. No doubt in my mind the Dodgers win tonight, barring changes. But Gregory Soto, I think, is kind of a coin flip. But for what the Mets will be looking for, I don't think they're going to bring him back. That's my guess, personally. Beyond Gregory Soto, it's Jesse Winker. I love Jesse. I love Jesse Winker. You guys love Jesse Winker. We all love Jesse Winker. I would love to bring Jesse Winker back as a bench role, but he's done. Other than the vibes, he brought nothing to this Mets team. He has back issues that will probably be reoccurring heading into next season. And Buddy literally cannot play one single out that the Mets tried him to play in the corner outfield in the doubleheader against the Cardinals this year. The whole reason why Jesse Winker never played for the Mets for the most part this year is because he was put in the outfield literally one effing game the entire year. And that was in the doubleheader, rainy series against the Cardinals. Blade Tidwell was towing the rubber one of those games. Fly ball comes in enough for Jesse to play. He goes to try to play it, and he has a grade 2 oblique strain right away. He spends months of rehabbing. He comes back. His back flares up, and he never played a game for the Mets again this year. I love Jesse so much in 2024. It was great to see the vibes that he brought to this team, that he brought heading to postseason play, that he brought in postseason play with his own great bat performance. But knowing he provides no defensive value, and knowing that he would warrant you to honestly want to seek more of a platoon DH again, for all those reasons, I think the Jesse Winker ship has sailed. So, Jesse, thank you for your service here. We love you. We know how much you've loved your time here. He's enjoyed being a Met more than any other organization he's been a part of. He said it verbatim. And I don't want to see him go. I would love for him to sign and be a vibes guy. But If David Stearns is really going to prioritize defense the way that he's trying to right now, Jesse Winker can't be your everyday DH. You got to upgrade there beyond someone like him, in my opinion. And I think that's why the end has come with Jesse Winker, sadly, mainly due to injury that we saw this year. Ryan Helsley. I'll be quick on this. Ryan Helsley had an 11-year array at one point with the Mets. He finished with around a 7 or 6 or so. Ryan Helsley led baseball in saves a year ago. Moved out of that closer position. He did not find comfortability until really towards the end of the season for the Mets. He tipped pitches way more than he should have. He struggled to handle the pressure of being in the New York market. Unless the Mets really consider Ryan Helsley as their replacement for Edwin Diaz in the closer role next season, I don't see a world where Ryan Helsley returns as a New York Met. Because one, he's going to want closer money if the Mets aren't going to want to pay. And two, Helsley has so many things go wrong as a New York Met. If you're Ryan Helsley, how many justified reasons do you have to actually want him to be here? I don't think that there are enough, personally. So, Ryan Helsley, stay or go, I think he's absolutely going. Cedric Mullins, we don't need to talk about this, but he had a combined, 500 OPS during his time with the New York Mets. In a walk year, didn't step up, absolutely crumbled. Looked like a guy who never should have left Baltimore because he could not handle the big market. Simple as that. Deer in headlights. Wishing you the best, Cedric. You will never be a New York Met again. Beyond him, AJ Minter. Even though AJ got cooked, tore his lat clean off in the first half of the season, he lucked out because he's a player option of $11 million, and you bet your ass he's going to accept it. So, folks, buckle up. The Mets already have their lefty tandem to begin next season out of the bullpen, with A.J. Minter making full recovery from that lat injury, and Brooks Raley as your 1-2 punch. If you ask me, that's the best lefty duo you could probably hope for from the Mets, with the exception of maybe looking for a little bit more velocity from someone either internally or externally. That's where Gregory Soto checked off the box when the Mets first traded for him, but he looked really good his first 8-9 outings, and then he just was never the same from that point on, Gregory Soto. So I think the Mets might want a little bit more velocity out of a lefty in the bullpen. Beyond that, though, I think they're set. I think hopefully a healthy, bounce-back, hungry A.J. Minter, looking to dominate again in the National League East, this time as a Met for a change, will bode well pairing with one Brooks Raley. He's coming back, obviously. Frankie Montas, sadly, has a $17 million contract. Regardless of insurance coverage, the Mets are going to have to deal with that, and he will accept that player option, and he'll rehab the entire 2026 season under New York Mets payroll. And yes, he'll probably never pitch a game for the New York Mets, which is crazy. Starling Marte, everybody, is a free agent. Marte batted around 270 this year, or 750 to 760 OPS, 9 home runs, couple RBIs, couple stolen bags, 36. Juan Soto's best friend, was clutch in pinch hit moments at times, stepped up in the DH role when Vientos was injured. Honestly, had a very good season for a guy that wasn't supposed to be here to begin the year, as the Mets did everything in their power to trade him. Nothing at all personal against Starling Marte, but I just don't see how you can justify bringing him back. Marte, doesn't have much defensive value because while he has a great arm, he doesn't have the range, and you risk him being injured at any point because he's made of glass. The only reason why he's been on this roster is because of his contract status. Let's call it how it is. So I get it. He's deemed as the captain, according to Juan Soto, and Juan loves him. But unless Juan really has that much of an impact in this organization where you have to keep someone like him as the unk, basically, just for the vibes off the bench, maybe that's the route the Mets go. I'll have to see to believe it. Right now, I think Starling Marte has played his last game as a New York Met. He can go. Wish him the best. And not that the Mets shouldn't prioritize vibes, because they should. But Marte's vibes weren't even enough to get the Mets team into postseason play. So miss me with the nonsense of saying, oh, you're going to hurt the clubhouse culture. Shut up. The clubhouse culture clearly wasn't good enough for this Mets team. Otherwise, they would still be in postseason, or at least have made postseason for that matter. Edwin Diaz, the big one, has an opt-out of $15.5 million. If you're Edwin Diaz, you're probably going to want to opt out because you could get more guaranteed money on multiple years left on another contract should you wish to do so. So is Edwin likely going to opt out? Yes. Do I want him to leave? No. Should the Mets keep Edwin Diaz? Yes. Do we want him to stay? Yes. Will he stay? Massive question mark if he'll stay. And here's why. If Edwin Diaz, and I've said this a lot, if Edwin Diaz is prioritizing maximizing the dollar and maximizing long-term contract again as a reliever, it's more than likely not going to be staying with the New York Mets. David Stearns does not run ship here like Billy Upper does. And while Stearns has learned a thing or two from everything that went wrong this past season, it's hard to believe that he's going to bend over backwards on, say, a 4 or 5 year contract for Edwin Diaz if that is what he's seeking. Edwin Diaz saw Tanner Scott get $70+ million of 4 years that we saw the past year or so. What makes you think that he's not going to do everything in his power to seek yet another contract of anywhere of 60 to 80+ million dollars in value, if not 100 million again? Edwin could say, listen, I am one of the best closers in the game. I deserve another additional 5 years of a new contract. And I would like my 5 years of a contract to total at least 120 million or something. Even with deferred money, the Mets would be beyond stupid to do that. I love Edwin Diaz to death and I want him to return. But they need to put a line in the sand as to what they do here in that regard. Supa, no. Any articles suggesting the Mets should trade Lindor are the same fan-related articles that literally mean nothing and impact nothing, because that's all there is to it. The Mets are not going to trade Lindor, and there's a great reality that Lindor will never play in a uniform outside of a New York Met as of now. So, no. We're not even going to entertain that stuff. It ain't going to happen. He's literally the least of the Mets' problems right now. Yeah, go ahead. Trade arguably your most valuable player, your second most valuable player. Go ahead. See where that gets you. Let me know. Edwin Diaz, though, most of us can agree we would like him to return, but there is a reality where he doesn't. And the one thing I will say, and I'll say it again, from a fan point of view, it feels like it's a smack across the face to Steve Cohen if Edwin Diaz not only opts out, but demands a similarly structured contract to what he previously had. Edwin Diaz already got a record-breaking deal among relievers. He reset the market for relievers, as a matter of fact. And right after doing that, he blew his knee up and was out for a year. And Steve Cohen did everything in his power to take care of him still. Regardless of insurance coverage, I just don't see how that's a good look to Steve, should you wish to do so. Even with you prioritizing yourself and your family, I get it. But don't act like you haven't been making your bag already. You're on a base contract of $100 million. I think you'll be able to handle affording your weekly food and everything that you need for your family. I think you're going to get it. So, for David Stearns, who is not usually a big spender on relievers, how far is he willing to go for someone like Edwin Diaz? We don't know, because we haven't really seen him do such a thing for a reliever before. This will go out of his territory in ways that bringing in Alonso and bringing in Soto was going out of his usual territory as a small market manager, GM, from his time with the Brewers. So, big question mark with him. Same applies, obviously, with Pete Alonso as well, because we all want Pete Alonso back, right? Most of us want Alonso back. I want Alonso back. 126 RBIs, second most RBIs in his career. Definitely one in hand with Soto being a plate setter right in front of him. 38 home runs. 270, a really good-looking season for Alonso, over 850 OPS, 40% above league average on the WRC Plus for basically how above league average was he as a hitter. A lot to love about Pete Alonso. And he clutched up with runners in scoring position, too. A lot to love there. But it's going to come down to this. And Pete Alonso is seeking 6 years, $175, $180 million. And a team's willing to go 6 years for him. He will not be a New York Met. And Pete Alonso settles more in the range of what he did last year on a 3-4 year contract range of high AAV with opt-outs, then he will be a New York Met. Alonso's going to want at least 5 years, especially knowing that while there isn't going to be a huge market for his services, if he shows his further willingness to play DH just as much as first base, what makes you think that he is not going to get a big bag as someone who provides you more defensive value than, say, Anthony Santander, who made $90 million across a 5-year deal for the most part? Kyle Schwarber's previous contract was 4 years, $80+ million, and he's going to be looking for a bigger bag than that now. Is there an argument to be had that you should pursue Schwarber over Alonso? There's a lot of different routes the Mets can go here. They want Alonso to return. Alonso would like to return. But I think Alonso has a greater appetite to be willing to be partying with the organization should it happen, because he already knows how this process goes. He knows how they're going to treat him. And he also knows that he doesn't have the qualifying offer attached to him, meaning that the Mets don't have as much leverage on him as they had previously a year ago. Any team can go out and seek Alonso without having to cough up a draft pick as compensation in return to the Mets. So, do I want Alonso to stay? Yes. Is he going to stay? Your guess right now is genuinely as good as mine. That's why he's headlining our video that we dropped yesterday on 5 Mets who will not return, because there's a greater reality that Alonso is not a New York Met next season than what was the case the year prior. And then it begs the question, if Alonso walks, what in God's name do you do to this team? What do you do? And that, my friends, is what brings us to our final segment today before I get out of here that we're going to spend the next 10-20 minutes on, and that has everything to do with what is available for the New York Mets this free agent market. And let's start here with just notable names. Let's get into notable names, and then we'll go on from there. Notable names in the free agent market, and this does not include trade market, because we'll talk about some trade options as well. This is just going to be a soft discussion on players that we could see connect to the Mets and players that you will see me deep dive in greater deep dive of greater length and of greater discussion and future content on the platform this offseason. Alex Bregman, an obvious one, who is expected to opt out of his contract by the Boston Red Sox, even at $25 million. Alex Bregman would most certainly shore up Mets third base, but you would fall in the risk of, unless you're doing like every year-long thing where you're giving him $45-50 million a year with opt-outs, he might really demand that long-term deal somewhere, and the Mets will not be that team. Brett Baty has shown enough to us that he's someone that can really build off of a great 2025 campaign. I think all of us Mets fans would be content if that's our third baseman next year. Brett Baty's our full-time third baseman next year. I'm not losing sleep over it until I have a reason to. So Baty, I don't think Bregman is a mandatory thing that the Mets need to go after a hunt, but they will, the same way that they were in his market a year ago. Cody Bellinger is a fascinating one because we know he's going to opt out of his deal, right? You know he's going to be looking for a big bag. Belly's had a great year with the Yankees, a really good year. And Bellinger would honestly check off so many boxes for the Mets if they went out of their way to sign him to be their center fielder. Bellinger would also give you flexibility to be able to bite the bullet more on if you say parted ways with Pete Alonso. Because Bellinger's willingness and ability to play both first base and center field, while you can flip-flop, interchange with whoever's at DH per se, if you pursue Schwarber or someone else there, you can get creative. Would the Mets signing Cody Bellinger have Yankees fans ready to burn down Citi Field because they will have lost their star outfielder for a second year in a row? Absolutely. Do I think the Mets will be heavily in the market for Cody Bellinger? I do think that they will. Do I think that they're going to land him? No clue. There's a reality that they don't even get close. There's a reality where they don't even heavily prioritize him. But do I think that the Mets would be stupid not to at least target and have normal negotiations with Bellinger? Yeah, I think it'd be very stupid for them not to consider that. So fully anticipate them to be in that market. Jordan Montgomery's a free agent. He's been washed, as we know. Not a lefty I anticipate the Mets to go after. Unless you're really, really buying low and hoping for the best so he can refine himself. But again, enough with the bargain shit. Let's just kind of figure out something for a change. Trevor Story, if he opts out of his contract with the Red Sox, it'll be fascinating what happens with him. JT Realmuto is a free agent. I genuinely don't care. He's Babby 35, not getting any younger. Wouldn't hate the idea as a veteran to pair, honestly. You know, the more I say it, I wouldn't hate the idea of pairing JT with Alvarez and giving them pretty, split playing time, but trying to favor more Alvy. JT would be obviously an upgrade of a backup over Luis Torrens. Not a personal slight to Torrens, just a matter of fact. We all can agree there. Be kind of crazy if JT Realmuto was in a tandem with Alvarez next year, I'm not going to lie. But I don't anticipate it. Nomo, thank you for the donation. Like, subscribe, y'all. Enjoy your pizza. I will. Thank you so much. Thank you. Your Dodgers are up 7-2. I'm going to go on a limb and say you're going to handle the Reds tonight. Yeah, it's almost like the Mets could have maybe put up a little bit of a better fight. You know how Brent Suter and all those Reds were dancing in the clubhouse after making playoffs? The least that they could have done was actually show up a little bit. Instead, just serve up a steaming pile of shit that you call a 2-game sweep. That's going to happen to them in LA against those Dodgers. Nick Martinez, nope, he's a bum. Chris Bassett, Chris Bassitt is a fascinating veteran option that the Mets could consider as a horse in the rotation next year, like genuinely speaking. And the Mets want to go like short-term deal, 1-year deal for a starter. If he would have interest in returning, I would not at all be opposed to Chris Bassitt as a mid to back end rotation option for this team as a veteran to pair with McClain, with Ton, with Sproat, with Scott. Like, the more I talk about it, the more I really don't hate it. Like, if that's a guy that can kind of be your veteran in your rotation to pair with an ace that the Mets can hopefully acquire, that'd be great. But more than anything, if the Mets are going to acquire a starter, I really want them to go after a true ace more than anything else. I don't need them. Like, Framber Valdez is an ace, no doubt, but we've already seen Framber Valdez peak. And for the kind of contract Valdez is looking for, no chance the Mets are going to give him that. No chance. If Valdez looks and gets anywhere close to Max Fries's contract of like 8 years, $200 million, the Mets don't even get close. There's no chance. Literally no chance that happens, in my opinion. And that's okay, because I think Valdez is not going to age well at all. I think his velo is going to struggle mightily over the next couple of years. I don't think he's going to keep himself in the proper shape. I do think that Framber Valdez, as we see 4 years from now, is not going to be nearly the pitcher that he currently is, if not sooner. Kyle Schwarber, having a great year, over 50 home runs. We know how valuable Schwarber is on the home run front. We will talk about him more, but yes, definitely a player that you guys can anticipate for the Mets to be connected to. No doubt about it. He will be in the mix. And we're going to talk a lot about Kyle Schwarber this offseason, honestly, and the pros that come along with him. Lucas Giolito is a fascinating one. The Mets have shown interest in him in the past in previous regimes. He has a mutual option, so there's a solid chance he goes back to Boston. But an interesting one. Chris Sale is a club option. He's going to return, obviously. He's still a stud. Miles Michaelis can go F himself. Literally hate Miles Michaelis more than most starters in baseball. And it has to do with Chris Bassitt giving Cardinals and their players benefit of the doubt a couple years ago by saying that them drilling the Mets constantly in the series in 2022 wasn't purposeful, because the baseballs have been so inconsistent. And Michaelis replied to the media and said, oh, no, we have full control of the baseball. So, okay, that means you were purposely drilling us then, you piece of garbage. Got it. Noted. Holy shit, your garbage mustache could not get the job done for you this year, huh, buddy? Zach Eflin's a free agent. Dylan Cease is free agent. The Mets will be in the Dylan Cease market, no doubt. They have been in the past. They will be again. Zach Gallen as well. Zach Gallen, honestly, might be the most feasible or one of the most feasible starter options for the Mets to acquire in the free agent market this year, and here's why. Zach Gallen is probably not going to cost you nearly as much as these starters looking for those 6-7 year contracts. He's likely going to fall in the range of a 3 to a 5 year deal with opt-outs potentially. And should that be the case, Gallen, a New Jersey native that's more Philly than he is New York, I believe, but still New Jersey native, I'm sure would love to come back on the East Coast. And his guy that's coming off of a down year, but there were reasons as to why he was coming off of a down year. And I think it went in hand to a degree on not necessarily handling being in the walk year with a Diamondbacks team that had the struggles that they had. Gallen is the type of starter that I think the Mets could buy and really maximize his potential with. That's the kind of pitcher that I think there's less risk involved genuinely in what you're investing in, as long as you're not investing long-term in. If you're investing short to mid-term, I think there's potential there. Long-term, no chance. Don't even bother with someone like him. Shane Bieber, player option. He's going to be going back probably. I don't know what's going to happen with Shane Bieber, but that's not a guy I think the Mets need to bark up the tree up much. Ranger Suarez having a great year for the Phillies. He would be a great get for this Mets rotation, no doubt. If there was a role where we could replace Sean Manaea with Ranger Suarez right now, we would do it. But unless the Mets do jump and trade away someone like Sean Manaea, I don't anticipate that happening. Nor do I see the Phillies allowing Ranger Suarez to sign with a team like the Mets unless the Mets gave like a gross overpay on a long-term deal. And that's another circumstance where I don't think that would benefit the Mets at all. Any long-term deal for the Mets for a starter for the Mets, they're not going to do unless it's someone that is honestly more realistic that we would see in the trade market. See, Eugenio Suarez is in the free agent market. That's a big bat to consider, especially more for DH, but you'd have to trade Vientos especially to make that happen. Brandon Woodruff's on a mutual option, so we'll see what his future holds. Luis Robert isn't going anywhere because he's got that club option. You go down the list, there's a lot of guys, obviously. Devin Williams is going to be UFA. Yeah, let's bring him over here. That'd be hilarious. Could you imagine Devin Williams in a Mets uniform? Oh, my God. It's a hilarious thought. It really is. There's a plethora of very solid and talented players in this year's free agent class. Trent Grisham, and that's definitely a name for sure. I'm sorry, guys. I would not complain at all if Trent Grisham was the Mets starting center fielder next year. And I don't think you guys would either. Has a defensive range, has value, and has a great home run bat. But if you're Grisham and the Yankees, you're going to do everything in your power to rekindle that relationship. Why break that up, right? So I think Grisham would also be fantastic. I think Grisham is a guy you could have until you are comfortable with Carson Bench, who I think Bench can really crack this team out of spring training next year. But if you want more of a guaranteed thing, Trent Grisham is that guaranteed thing, and he is a UFA. The Mets could do something hilarious and go all in on Trent Grisham. Cody Bellinger honestly feels not as realistic for this team as I think Trent Grisham does, who the Mets actually talked to the Yankees about in a 1-for-1 trade for back in the trade deadline for Brett Beatty. So the Mets have had a level of interest in Trent Grisham. The more I talk about it, the more it makes sense. If the Yankees are not going to be able to bring back all these guys and their big lefty bats and Bellinger and Grisham is a nice consolation prize if the Mets can go out and get. Ramon Laureano, he's on the club option, 6.5. That'll be exercised. He's having such a good season for the Padres now, too. Jose Ramirez, I'm sorry. Jose Iglesias is a UFA. Got to bring OMG back. Huh? Got to do it. Got to bring the vibes back. Just kidding. You can't try to do it again. It won't work the same. It never does, sadly. But let's go on from talking about these free agent options, everybody, to now talking about the trade options. Because as you guys saw in the thumbnail, there's one guy that makes a lot of sense via trade. That's Freddie Peralta. And Freddie Peralta makes a lot of sense for trade, and here's why. We're going to talk about at least 4 to 5 different starters that make sense for trade. Freddie Peralta is one of the most notable, in my opinion. Here's why. And I've had him connected with the Mets for a while, but here's one of the many reasons as to why that is. Freddie Peralta is now going to be on the final year of his contract. He's owed $8 million next year. The Brewers love saving money, and they churn out great pitching every single year. Peralta's in a walk year. Freddie Peralta is not going to re-sign with the Milwaukee Brewers, more than likely, unless the Brewers have a great run this year and they extend him. Freddie Peralta, in 176 innings this year, has a 10.39 K per nine, a 3.3 walks per nine, and just over 1 home run per nine, a 2.7 ERA to a 3.4 expected ERA, and a 3.6 FIP. Buddy's a dog. This is an ace caliber starter, and this fits the mold for a David Stearns who would, one, get the financial backing and flexibility by Steve Cohen to not only trade for a player like him, but extend a player like him is the most important aspect of this. He's at 29 years of age. And yes, we know that Stearns doesn't love to give long-term contracts to guys, but Peralta's right in the peak prime of his career. There's a world where the Mets could bring him in and extend him to an additional 4 or 5 years at least of, I think, what would be really good high AV. The Mets don't want to go the length for a starter like him, but AAV-wise, I think that they would be willing to bite the bullet here. And if you're the Brewers, you can make a trade happen where you get some really promising younger pitching prospects for the Mets, potentially even a deal where you consider trading Brandon Sproat. Not that I wish it, not that I want it. I think Sproat has all the potential upside to blossom into a starter that could be of similar value to someone like Freddie Peralta next season. But there's a lot of uncertainty there because that the Mets have all the guns to flex, which is their great farm when looking at pitching depth. Not just Sproat, but guys waiting in the wings like Zach Thornton, Will Watson, Jonathan Santucci, R.J. Gordon, Jack Weniger. The list goes on and on. The Mets have an abundance of arms that they can dip into now to add guys that will give them immediate impact for 2026 and beyond. That's a guy that makes a lot of sense, in my opinion. If you're going to trade for a starter, that's a rental, but a guy that you know that you'll be able to lock up long-term on extension more than likely. Another guy that comes to mind, but if I'm being honest with you, it's going to take a lack of bias by a Marlins team that did everything in their power to show you why they were proud to take down the New York Mets. And Sandy Alcantara has been connected to the Mets for a hot minute now, but this is now peak prime time to trade him if the Marlins wish to do so, because he had a great second half, a 3.3 basically for the most part in the second half, ERA-wise, dominated the Mets again that we saw, going 7 strong innings, has a 2027 club option, and is coming off of a season where he finished the year with a 5.3 ERA and a 4.5 expected ERA. Buddy had an 8 ERA for like all the first half. He really settled down. His K per 9 is not great, but his walk per 9 is not bad at all. K per 9 of a 7.3 to walks per 9 of a 2.9. He changed his game. He didn't have the swing and miss that he was looking for coming back from injury this year, Sandy, the Cy Young former pitcher. Instead, he induced a lot of good ground ball outs. The way they did it consecutively against the Mets like 12, 13 times in that very unfortunate game. Point here is that Sandy's a guy who the Mets have been going after for a while. And if this is someone who they still have interest in, do not be surprised they continue to dabble in that market. Edward Cabrera, they have still been in connection with as well. I think Cabrera makes more sense for them to trade for a controllable starter with upside, where I think Cabrera is younger and has higher upside than Sandy Alcantara. But they may ask for a Kane's ransom. And how far are the Mets willing to go to trade in the division with the Marlins? Are the Marlins willing to go as far as they did with the Phillies last year? Because they effing traded Jesus Luzardo to Philadelphia right before the season began. And when that happened, I was so pissed off because I'm like, they're really going to do that with the Phillies, but we can't do something with the Marlins. Is that really what's happening here? And that's exactly what happened. And Jesus Luzardo had a very good season, all things considered, for the Phillies. Ups and downs and in between. So Sandy definitely fits that mold of an ace caliber starter that can help frontline this thing and give you a veteran there with some playoff experience, even though it's not a lot. Edward Cabrera, a lot of upside. Would not be opposed to Edward Cabrera at all. Then you look at the other obvious ones in Joe Ryan from the Minnesota Twins. But the Twins are going to want a Brandon Sproat type pitcher for Joe Ryan. And is that worth it in the end for Joe Ryan, who has a free agent status of 2028, so he's got 2 years left on his contract, and he's making pennies. He's making $3 million. So really good value of a contract for a guy who had 10.2 K per 9 to 2 walks per 9, a 3.4 ERA, a 3.4 expected ERA, and 171 innings. Fantastic starter. Ace caliber starter. This is the kind of guy that you go after because this is the kind of guy that you could extend while he still has 2 years left of control in his contract, extend him additional years, and make that a total contract of, say, anywhere from 5-6 years, and then you're really cooking. Sproat, what do you give him up for a guy like Joe Ryan? I think for right now, what you're getting, I would do it. I think you would do it because of what you're getting right now. But Brandon Sproat definitely does have upside to be something pretty impactful. But looking at the two, I would definitely say throw it in the air fryer. Oh, 100% Levin. You and I think. I hope you guys know that after every post game, most of the season, I would eat like a late dinner and I would pop everything in the air fryer. That's exactly what I do. Just give it a little quick air fry, 375. 5 minutes, maybe have a toast for a couple more minutes if I want a little bit more of a crunch and you're cooking. But Joe Ryan's a dog. We know he's a dog. That's an ace that would certainly help in a lot of ways for this rotation. Beyond him, let me check one more thing, everybody. If there's any way, if there's any consideration that the Mariners may have in trading away one of their rotation pieces for the sake of maximizing value of their roster because they don't have a lot of money to spend, I would love to go after a Logan Gilbert type or a George Kirby or a Brian Wu or a Miller. Literally any of those four, I would be happy with. That's how good the Mariners rotation is, everybody. So those are some players that we can kind of bear in mind. Those are like the big ones, the notable ones right away, but we're going to talk more in depth on some of these guys, along with plenty of other players that we have not even dabbled in yet when looking at the reliever market and a whole lot more. So make sure that you guys are on the lookout for it all as we are going to figure out what's best for this Mets team from looking at the defensive aspect of the roster as well as the pitching aspect and what they can do to change or really fine-tune a bit of things on the offensive end. Luis Castillo's a dog, but I think he's past where the Mets are looking right now. If I'm being complete, I think the Met. Not only I know it's in the best interest for the Mets to acquire an ace that's hopefully more in their later 20s, if not mid 20s, with some control or on the final year of their deal. Castillo's good, but I think we've already seen Castillo at his best, and you can counter that with a guy like Sandy. You're not wrong. But I just don't know. I don't think Castillo makes as much sense as some of the others if you're really trying to trade for like a clear ace. But he could be cheap. You're right. He could definitely be cheaper than others when looking at his contract stats. I'm not saying you're wrong. I wouldn't complain if we acquired Luis Castillo. I would just want to know what we're giving up for him, because then that is the only thing that may warrant the complaint. But having said that, everybody, that is going to do it for our Mets offseason plans live show. I would like to thank you guys all so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. So to recap and order, everybody, what is next for this Mets team? In summary, you have more coaching decisions that will be had. You're going to have more on the players opting out versus opting into contracts. We'll eventually find out who the Mets throw qualifying offers to, along with the other aspects of the coaching staff, if I didn't say that already. And then once playoffs are done, a month from now, obviously, because yes, we have a month of playoffs ahead, which is crazy to say as we're not in playoffs, I know. Then once that happens, we will get into more of the heart of what roster moves are going to happen with this team, and every news, rumor, and everything in between the Mets line that happens from that point, from here up until that point, we will make sure to cover here, as we always do on the WardyNYM platform. So again, thank you guys so much for the 35K, Mario. I appreciate that. Thank you to everybody that took the time to watch us live on a replay for our Mets offseason plans breakdown. Be on the lookout, as we're going to have more Mets content dropping every single day for the most part here on the WardyNYM all offseason long, whether it's pre-recorded videos and a live stream, or just a live stream, or just a video each day. Rest assured, we will have you covered for all things Mets. Thank you guys again so much. I hope you all have a great evening. Hope this gave you guys a greater idea as to what you can anticipate heading into the offseason. A lot of changes are going to be had with this Mets team, and a lot of drastic changes may be had. But rest assured, when we take a look at the roster and when we take a look at guys who'll be staying and leaving, the only other guys that I need to make sure I mention that are not free agents but still could be part of with, Jeff McNeil, obviously, one of David Peterson or Kodai Senga, and potentially one other piece on the roster of a Mark Vientos, or Ronnie Mauricio, or Luis Angel Acuna. Those are all guys that obviously could be parted with as well. But today I leaned in a bit more on the free agent aspect, because obviously the Mets have a whole laundry list of free agents that, are probably not going to be returning for the most part. So thank you for the kind words. Baby's doing fantastic too, Chris. Hope the same for you and your family. But that's about it, everybody. Thank you so much a lot, and I will see you all in the next one. You guys have a great one. Peace out, folks.